The vast majority of people are absolute prisoners of their own visceral reactions. You firmly believe that the world acts against you, that bad luck hunts you down, or that the attitudes of others are specifically designed to ruin your existence. This is the most comforting and destructive lie you tell yourself to avoid taking responsibility for your own mind. The chaos you perceive outside is nothing more than an exact projection of the disorder you refuse to face within yourself. Today, you will dismantle that optical illusion and learn the exact mechanism to become completely immune to any storm that tries to tear you down. You live convinced that insults, criticisms, and rejections are direct attacks possessing the inherent power to hurt you. You are deeply mistaken. Absolutely nothing has the capacity to affect you unless there is a crack in your own identity that allows that poison to enter. If you become enraged when someone questions your intelligence or your worth, it is not because of the offense itself, but because in the deepest, darkest corners of your mind, you harbor the terror that they are right. The offender is simply pressing a button that you left completely exposed. This is the exact reason why two different individuals can face the same financial tragedy or romantic betrayal and emerge with diametrically opposed results. While one sinks into an abyss of self-destruction and misery, the other uses the experience as the primary fuel to rebuild their reality with greater strength. The difference never lies in the severity of the event that occurred, but in the psychological filter through which it is processed. The external world is brutally neutral. It is neither inherently cruel nor compassionate. It simply exists and moves forward without caring about your feelings. To break this cycle of pathological vulnerability, you must begin to observe your environment not as a battlefield, but as a ruthless mirror. Every minuscule irritation, every sudden frustration, and every emotional trigger that makes you lose your temper is a direct message from your own psyche. Instead of wasting your vital energy trying to silence the messenger or demanding that the entire world adapt to your extreme sensitivity, you must use that information to track down the original wound. When you heal what is broken inside, the outside magically loses all its power over you. Your unconscious mind operates from the shadows, directing every single one of your decisions while you falsely believe you're in control. It carefully stores all the insecurities, the paralyzing fears, and the unresolved traumas that you refuse to look directly in the eye. This internal darkness dictates your automatic reactions in the face of adversity. When you fail to bring this hidden emotional baggage into the light of consciousness, you end up repeating the exact same destructive patterns over and over again, cowardly labeling this macabre repetition as fate or simple bad luck. When a person insults or belittles you, they are not creating a new pain inside your chest. The only thing they are doing is violently illuminating a sharp pain that had already resided within you for a very long time. If you possessed an unshakable peace and an absolute certainty about who you are, the verbal attack of a stranger or an acquaintance would resonate in the void without causing the slightest scratch. It would be exactly like trying to scream insults at a granite mountain. The mountain does not take offense, does not defend itself, and does not move. Your reactivity reveals exactly where you are weakest. The real and painful work consists of voluntarily delving into that psychological shadow that terrifies you so much. You must sit alone with your worst fears, question your sickly need for approval, and confront the lies you have told yourself to feel superior or protected. By illuminating these dark parts, you immediately strip them of their power to control you from the subconscious. You cease to be a puppet driven by invisible wounds and become the absolute master of your responses. Brutal self-knowledge is the only impenetrable shield that exists against the chaos of human interaction. You are trapped in a destructive addiction of which you are not even aware. The addiction to reacting. Every time someone challenges you or circumstances fail to align with your childish desires, your nervous system fires off in a fraction of a second. Your heart rate accelerates, anger clouds your judgment, and you act impulsively before logic has any opportunity to intervene. You become an absolute slave to your own emotional spikes, allowing any random comment to determine your mood for the rest of the day. You are emotionally predictable and incredibly easy to manipulate. This compulsive reactivity is not simply a quirk of your personality, it is a deep neurological groove that you have dug over the years. Every time you explode with rage at a traffic jam or sink into depression over a workplace criticism, you are physically reinforcing the brain pathways that guarantee you will react exactly the same way in the future. You have systematically trained your own brain to be fragile, volatile, and highly susceptible to external manipulation. Your mind has transformed into a perfectly tuned machine designed to generate automatic, unnecessary suffering on demand. The great news within this bleak landscape is that you can completely rewire your own mental circuitry. You possess the biological capacity to insert a conscious pause between the threatening stimulus and your response. The next time you feel the fire of indignation rising in your throat, stop dead in your tracks. Observe the physical sensation of anger as if you were a scientist analyzing a strange specimen under a microscope without letting it consume you. By repeatedly refusing to participate in the pattern of automatic reaction, you atrophy the neurological pathway of chaos and forge a mind of steel. You consume an obscene amount of mental energy trying to force the world to fit perfectly into your microscopic expectations. You desperately want people to act according to your imaginary script, your professional projects to follow a linear path without obstacles, and the future to be totally predictable. This sickly obsession with controlling the uncontrollable is the main root of your chronic anxiety. You live in a state of perpetual tension because deep down you know perfectly well that you're fighting a useless war against the fundamental laws of the universe. The harder you clench your fist to hold on to someone or to ensure a specific outcome, the more violent resistance you generate around you. Desperation carries a pungent odor that instantly repels genuine love, destroys opportunities for success, and drives away people of high value. By desperately needing a situation to go your way in order to feel peace, you're handing over the keys of your mental stability to pure chance. You voluntarily place yourself in a position of extreme vulnerability, waiting to be crushed by the imminent disappointment of reality not following your exact orders. The only path to true power involves categorically renouncing the lie of external control. You must accept with relentless coldness that you have zero jurisdiction over the opinions of others, over market fluctuations, or over the random tragedies of existence. Your only area of absolute and total sovereignty is the management of your own mind. When you stop demanding that reality bow before you and instead focus exclusively on mastering your internal response to any given scenario, you become truly invincible in the face of circumstances. True control is entirely internal. There is a profound and unsettling paradox governing the dynamics of success and mental peace. At the exact moment you renounce the sickly need for things to happen in a specific way, they begin to flow in your favor naturally. When you abandon the paralyzing terror of being judged or rejected by others, your authentic confidence emerges effortlessly and magnetizes those around you. Obsession and excessive attachment act as containment barriers that block your own progress, while radical detachment opens the floodgates of opportunity. Your grip is suffocating your potential. Real detachment has absolutely nothing to do with apathy or becoming a cold being devoid of human emotion. It is about lethal clarity. It consists of getting deeply involved in your projects, loving those who matter to you with intensity, and pursuing your goals with aggression, but always maintaining the certainty that your intrinsic value does not depend on the final outcome. You know that if the company goes bankrupt or the romantic relationship crumbles, you will still be whole and standing tall. This emotional independence makes you a force of nature impossible to manipulate or break. Begin to practice the master art of dropping the imaginary reins you believe you hold. Do your work with brutal excellence, prepare your strategy with surgical meticulousness, and then completely abandon any expectation about the final result. Let events unfold with their own natural inertia. By eliminating the mental friction generated by your constant resistance to reality, you conserve all your energy to adapt and maneuver with agility in the face of any surprise. Let go of the illusion of dominating the world and focus on the undeniable reality of dominating yourself. Much of the piercing pain you feel when insulted or ignored does not hurt your real self. It hurts your fabricated identity. You have meticulously built a false self, a paper armor based exclusively on the praises you receive, the social status you hold, and the flawless image you project to the outside. This artificial ego is extremely fragile and requires constant maintenance. It needs others to validate it every single minute so it does not fall apart. By tying your self-esteem to external, volatile factors, you become a lifelong prisoner in the court of public opinion. When someone launches a sharp criticism at you, your explosive reaction or your deep sorrow is the irrefutable evidence that this threat has pierced your paper shield. You genuinely feel that your psychological survival is at imminent risk because you confuse your real identity with the superficial shell you have invented. If you truly knew who you are deep down, if you had your foundations planted on solid rock, the negative comment of a stranger would be as irrelevant as a raindrop hitting steel. The offense only manages to penetrate where there is a fundamental doubt about yourself. You must ruthlessly demolish that structure of external validation, dismantle that false self that feeds on likes, applause, and the acceptance of people you do not even respect deep down. Forge an unshakable identity based solely on your own internal standards of discipline, resilience, and character. When your self-concept stops being a commodity traded in the marketplace of public opinion, you acquire an aura of natural authority. You transform into someone who needs to prove absolutely nothing to anyone. And that is the highest form of silent intimidation. Your constant suffering is not a mystical curse. It is a biological habit rooted in the very architecture of your brain. The neural pathways of your mind have been optimized over decades to detect non-existent threats and generate panic at the slightest friction. Your body has become addicted to the chemical substances of stress, the hormones of conflict, and the muscular tension that accompanies every emotional tantrum. You react with disproportionate fury to trivial problems because your biology demands that daily dose of drama to feel strangely alive and alert. This neurological programming keeps you operating in a perpetual state of survival, depleting your reserves of vital energy until you are left exhausted at the end of each day. You are incapable of focusing deeply or executing long-term plans because your attention is constantly hijacked by self-manufactured emotional emergencies. By allowing your environment to control your brain chemistry through cheap provocations, you surrender the ownership of your own biology. You are a hacked biological system, operated by remote control by any individual willing to toss an insult your way. To deprogram this machine of misery, you must subject yourself to an iron mental discipline through voluntary exposure to discomfort. Train your nervous system to remain cold and stable under intense pressure. When you face a conflict, take a deep breath and force your body to consciously relax instead of tensing up. Compel your brain to process the information before generating a chemical discharge. With time and constant repetition, the neural pathways of panic will wither from disuse, and you will construct a direct superhighway toward imperturbable, calculating calm. Visualize for a moment a catastrophic Category 5 storm. Lightning tears through the darkness. Hurricane winds uproot trees, and torrential rain floods entire cities, sowing absolute chaos on the surface. However, high above that massive destruction, that climatic violence, and that deafening noise, the sky remains unaltered, vast, black, and perfectly serene. It is not touched, wounded, or moved by the ferocity of the weather occurring below. This is the exact analogy of how the structure of your mind must function when facing the trials of your daily existence. You're not the thought of terror that crosses your mind, nor are you the burst of anger burning in your chest after a public humiliation. Those violent emotional spikes are simply the transient weather occurring within your biology. The fatal error that condemns you to suffer is identifying directly with the storm, believing that you are the rain, the wind, and the thunder. By merging your identity with passing emotions, you allow yourself to be dragged by the hurricane and end up smashed against the rocks. You lose all your perspective and drown in a glass of water for lack of clarity. You must anchor your identity in the infinite sky of your own consciousness, not in the volatile weather of your temporary feelings. When overwhelming sadness or paralyzing stress appears, do not try to fight them, do not repress them, and do not hide. Simply observe them passing beneath you with the exact same indifference with which you watch dark clouds moving across the horizon. Understand that they have a short life cycle and will eventually dissipate. By distancing yourself from your own emotions, you become truly invulnerable to the chaotic fluctuations of your humanity. The entire world is a gigantic chessboard, and the overwhelming majority of individuals go through life being utilized as simple disposable pawns. They move reactively from one square to another, blindly pushed by their basic impulses, by the provocations of their adversaries, and by their childish desire for immediate gratification. They have no strategy whatsoever. They do not see the big picture, and they end up being sacrificed in plays they cannot even begin to comprehend. They are so immersed in the drama of the game that they never realize they are being mercilessly manipulated. True mastery of existence requires that you rise above the board to become the cold, calculating player. The silent observer does not become indignant when losing a piece, nor do they celebrate euphorically when capturing another. They maintain an unshakable posture, evaluating the terrain and calculating 10 moves in advance. They understand perfectly well that uncontrolled emotionality is the mortal enemy of tactical thinking. When you observe human dynamics from this altitude, the manipulations and attacks of others become insultingly predictable and incredibly easy to dismantle. Practice panoramic vision in every tense interaction you face in your routine. Instead of getting tangled in the hurtful words of someone trying to wound you, observe the deep, pathetic insecurity that motivates their attack. Analyze their moves from a safe psychological distance, removing all the personal weight from the matter. By becoming the absolute dispassionate observer, you neutralize any attempt at external sabotage. You become lethally efficient because, while everyone around you is consumed in emotional flames, you keep your mind freezing cold and razor-sharp. When you finally master this state of untouchable presence and stop reacting like an automaton to the outside world, a highly strange and powerful phenomenon occurs. The people around you begin to perceive a tectonic shift in your energy. They immediately notice that they can no longer push your buttons, that their malicious provocations crash against a wall of solid steel, and that they cannot use your emotions against you. You cease to be an easy victim and transform into an imposing presence. That absence of reaction generates a deep, instinctive, and primitive respect. By no longer bleeding your vitality in useless disputes, in other people's dramas, and in toxic ruminations about things you cannot alter, you recover massive reserves of energy. That same raw, aggressive energy you previously wasted getting angry at traffic or arguing with ignorant fools is now available to be channeled directly into building your personal empire, developing your physique, or sharpening your mental skills. You transition from being permanently on the defensive to taking absolute control of the offensive in the ruthless battlefield of your own life. This is the true secret of those who dominate their reality. They do not try to change the mediocre people around them. They simply change the way their own mind processes information. They understand that whoever has absolute mastery over their perception has absolute mastery over their entire universe. You are the sole guardian of the gate to your mind, and you decide what information enters to destroy you and what stays outside. By consciously choosing the role of the unshakable observer, you cease to be a prisoner of your environment and become the architect of your destiny. You have lived long enough being the puppet of a chaotic environment and your own uncontrolled impulses. The decision to cut those invisible strings belongs exclusively to you, and it requires brutal mental discipline. Recognize that the outside is merely a mirror of your own shadow. Abandon the useless fantasy of absolute control and adopt the cold posture of the strategic observer. When nothing can disturb your internal peace, you will become truly unstoppable in the face of any adversity. If you have the courage to assume this level of personal mastery and stop reacting like a victim, subscribe, turn on notifications, and join me in forging a mind that no one can break.